Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody.
Good.
I'm a politician who does TV and a pastor, so I will call you out if you misbehave in the next 35 minutes right now. Okay, amen. Is that all right? There we go. Michael Blake, honored to be the moderator today, president of Next Level Sports Entertainment, CEO of Atlas Strategy Group. I guess I'm a recovering politician is what you would describe it, as a New York Assembly member. We are grateful that you're here. Before we keep going, can we clap it up for Artie Tandon and what she's doing for Smart City Expo USA? Just show her love, make sure that people are aware. And also, can we show our love to all the team members, the technicians, the sound, the media, security. It's always important that we show love for people that make things happen for us. Here's what's going to happen today. This will be interactive and engaging on how we talk through resilient infrastructure and smart public works. We're going to ask for each of our four visionaries. They will have 4 minutes at the top to share situation, action, result. What is the core problem that they are trying to address? How are they addressing it? What is the impact that they will be seeking to make within that in that way? Allow me to make sure we just dive right in. I'm going to give my mic to my left. Oh, he already has it there. So Roy Coley, who's here, Director of Water and Sewer Department in Miami-Dade County, will go first. Mahesh, Lunani, the CEO of Aquasight, will be second. Then I'll come to my right to Mayor Gallego in Phoenix, because I need to make sure I get invited out to Phoenix right there whenever I can. And then Mayor Lumumba. Nothing's going on in Jackson, Mississippi at all. Like, everything is just calm. Nothing about water that we got to talk about here today at all right now. So let's start it up with Roy. Again, 4 minutes for each. Then we'll do an armchair, and then we're going to actually open it up and give some time for Q&A. Roy, go ahead.
Hello. My name is Roy Coley, and I am Miami-Dade County's Director of Water and Sewer. Today, there are more than 1,000 people each and every day moving to the state of Florida. And Miami-Dade County is projected to be the first county in the state of Florida to exceed 3 million residents, and that's projected to happen in 2025. So, as the Water and Sewer Director, when we face an increase in population, we have existing capacity limitations, and then aging infrastructure that all utilities face, we know we need to take action. We know we need to make decisions with data. We know we need the best available technology to make certain that we make the decisions so our community has reliable and dependable water services. Some of the technology that we use to make these decisions, we do a lot of modeling. We do hydraulic modeling with some proprietary products called InfoWorks, InfoWater, to determine what our wastewater capacities are and our drinking water system capacities are. We've also partnered with the U.S. Geological Survey to model our groundwater so we can determine, as groundwater rises with sea level rise, climate change, heavy storm events, that we know how these groundwaters impact our utility. And so what I want to tell you about today is one of the needs that we've identified and how we're addressing that need. As our population grows, we notice the growth very heavy in the south portion of Miami-Dade County. We project that growth will continue. Our South District wastewater treatment plant, we see, has capacity limits. Now, in Miami-Dade County, we have 3 regional wastewater treatment plants. Each of those plants treats roughly 100 million gallons of water a day. Our South District plant, we can see with the growth that it needs expansion. So what we've done using the tools I shared with you is we've identified $600 million worth of projects that's part of $7.5 billion capital plan for our department to where we can meet the demands in the coming years. We leveraged more technology, a technology made by Revit, which we build 3D models of all of these improvements that are needed at the plant. And what these 3D models do for us is it allows all of our stakeholders, our operations personnel, our engineers, our vendors, our regulators, our resiliency people to look at these models and make sure that the improvements meet everybody's needs and are efficient. So what we're doing at this plant now is we're implementing the projects we've identified. We're incorporating sea level rise and climate change by identifying the amount of sea level rise that's anticipated between now and 2075 and the potential for storm surge for hurricanes because the plant's sitting right on the coast. And we're building all of these facilities at an elevation that we can depend in the next 40, 50 years that the plant can function during storms. We're implementing alternate power generating systems at these plants so they can function without shore power, without utility company power. And then the result of that will be is our community will have those wastewater services that they can depend on going forward. We're doing very similar things on the water side, our water treatment plants, but I bring up the South District Wastewater Treatment Plant because it is the single item that's identified as our biggest challenge to make sure the population and the aging infrastructure doesn't pose us a problem we can't manage.
So we want you to, before we go to Mahesh, just drill this home again. The amount of money that you just said in terms of the opportunity. You said 600 million, and then we'll dive into it. You also threw out $1 billion, so let's make sure we get very clear about the size of the scope.
All right, so for Miami-Dade County, for water and sewer, today we have a $7.5 billion capital improvement plan. Of that $7.5 billion, $600 million is at this one facility. Now let me tell you one other.
Hold on. I just want to do it as a teaser.
All right.
I just want to give the teaser because that's how you get people to pay attention. They hear billion and million, all of a sudden they get focused again right there. I'm gonna come back in a second, Roy. Let me go to Mahesh and then come back through. We talk about water. The transition right here is very timely. Mahesh, Lunani. Mahesh, you should talk about where you were yesterday and why that's relevant here, and then dive in, Mahesh.
Thank you, Michael. Good afternoon. I think we crossed noon today. I was yesterday with Mississippi River Cities and Towns Initiative, an aggregation of 30-plus mayors to talk about what cities need to do. And the fundamental message that I want to get across today is the digitization of the water systems. And I'll build a case why this is so critical. We talk about water when there's no water. We talk about it when there's too much of it, or when there's a contamination, or we have pollution coming out of our sewer sheds. The issue really is that we are dealing with a 21st century water challenges, but we have a 20th century water infrastructure. What's complicating this issue is the great resignation that we are seeing during COVID times, but also silver tsunamis. All this operating knowledge that is walking out the door. I've met over 400 cities, utility CEOs, such as Roy, and they have over 20 to 30% openings to fill those jobs. That's really an important operating knowledge that's going out the door. What fundamentally the cities need to do is act now in terms of sense, predict, act, and capture knowledge. Let me give you a very simple example. You need a smartwatch for a 60, 70-year-old so you can check the heartbeat, the pulse rate, the oxygen, the temperature. You don't need that Apple Watch on a 20-year-old individual because they're healthy by definition. So it's really important we take this old infrastructure and able to sense and predict these events. That's what we did at Aquasight, predicting where pumps going to fail, like we're doing in Boston, identifying to avoid the next Flint, what we're doing for 100 cities across the country, detecting leaks, saving thousands of dollars, knowing where the sewer is going to overflow. More importantly, as a rain and storm event is happening, which part of the neighborhood is going to getting hit with 50-year storm, so politicians can detect. It's an act of God. You cannot build an infrastructure overnight that can deal with 50 or 100-year storms. And more importantly, knowing if your treatment plants are running efficiently, as well as understanding which assets need to be replaced when and what year. These are the kinds of challenges and solutions we've addressed in over 120 cities, and there's exciting times when you combine sensor, data, GIS, artificial intelligence to automate the workforce. Now, we can't do it alone, so we partnered with Amazon. We are a partner that dedicated in driving digitization among the utilities. What really surprised us when we announced this partnership 2 months ago, that 330 local news agencies picked up this news. We didn't expect that, we didn't realize it, but we understand that the importance of water is everywhere across the whole country. So that's my talk. Thank you.
Hello, Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego.
Hold on, before you do that, I want to give you a shout out. You're going to get your full shine right here. I just want to acknowledge, I see Mayor Stephen Reed. Just want to acknowledge out of Montgomery right here as well. Always got to show our mayor's love before we turn to our mayors right now. Mayor Gallego. And you can go back to the previous slide of the panels. One more. There we go.
We can do our mayors. We'll talk about traffic congestion. You want to talk about traffic congestion? I'm feeling like, though, if we have the mayor of Jackson, maybe water is breaking news. So we'll stick with Public Works as well. And I should say I have 5 of my great partners who helped me with water in Phoenix in the audience today. So thank you. We are the 5th largest city in the United States and fastest growing. We are doing that in a desert environment. And we are adding jobs in advanced industries like semiconductors, electric vehicles, where they need a reliable water supply. By background, before running for office, I worked a decade at the Salt River Project, which is a power and water provider in the greater Phoenix area. So I do kind of feel like I'm with my people right now. My first panel today, I was seated next to Mayor Jones, who was a fashion model before running for mayor. So a little bit different than my background.
I got a nice suit on. Just saying.
Also a total models. Everywhere I go, fashion models. But I have the background in power and water, which is important for Phoenix right now. We are in a very long-term drought, and we have the lowest priority on the Colorado River, which is one of our key water supplies. So for us, supply is a huge focus for us, and we're trying to be as smart as possible in how we manage it, investing in AI solutions, which we have the expert here, so I won't go into details on that, but trying to be at the forefront. We have some great public-private partnerships, including one where we have a company running water treatment plant. We have another one where we've developed the largest RNG gas facility in the U.S. at our 91st Avenue wastewater treatment plant, and really working in as smart a ways as possible. We also have nature-based solutions, including a watershed water treatment program that has been very successful for us and also is the best bird watching in Phoenix and the only beaver habitat, as far as I am aware of, in my desert city. We think that direct potable reuse will be an important part of our future. We're trying to grow supplies as much as possible, and the more we can recycle, the better. And we're having some fun with it. We are trying to introduce the concept to the people of Phoenix, and one of the first things we did with that was a microbrewing challenge. We have great beer in the city of Phoenix. I'm guessing every mayor says that, but come out and visit us. You should check it out. And we have a big football game called the Super Bowl coming up. So beer and Super Bowl, am I tempting anyone? We gave the breweries reclaimed water and had them make great beer out of it. And because I am committed to sacrifice, I did help taste. Yes, you know. But it was a fun way to sort of say this, reclaimed water tastes just the same as water directly from a river, and it's going to be part of our future. So we're trying to educate our residents in a way that is accessible and hopefully using English language words that makes sense to people. Sometimes I feel like in government, if we wrote the Bill of Rights today, we would call it the BOR. And so we hope that as we talk about water in our desert community, that we really can make it accessible to people. And it's captured a lot of attention. I had a chance to go to Glasgow for the climate talks and then speak with then Prince Charles, and we had a laundry list of things we were doing in Phoenix around climate. But the one that captured his interest was the reclaimed water beer. And it was one of those moments with my staff where they're like, you talk to royalty about reclaimed water beer? But it's, I think, a way to make a very serious problem around drought and water supply fun and accessible, and hopefully make it a little bit easier for new technology to come into Phoenix and feel like something that people will be okay adopting. So we hope to be tech forward, but have fun while we're doing it.
And in that spirit, in what Mayor Gallego is doing right now in Phoenix, we said this privately, but I think it's important to say publicly. We are with you and have your back and prayers and support for what is going on in Jackson. And I think it speaks incredibly about your character. It would have been very understandable for you to stay in Jackson today, but you were here because we have to figure out how we address these challenges moving forward. So I just wanted to give you your roses and show honor before you kept going. Mayor Lumumba.
Good afternoon. First and foremost, I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to express my gratitude. Gratitude for the thoughts and prayers, gratitude for each city, each professional that reached out, whether it was putting experts in the field on the ground in Jackson from other cities, whether it was sending bottled water, potable water for our residents. Let me let you know we have so much water that we're concerned about the structural integrity of some of our buildings to hold it. So, but nonetheless, your response and your love is heartwarming, and I want to express that. So if you could give yourselves a round of applause, I would appreciate that. So I think that the most significant contribution that I can provide to this conversation is really representing the real life implications of a failure to invest in a resilient infrastructure. I said 2 years ago, in an interview that Jackson, upon the discussion of a passage of the infrastructure bill, I said that Jackson, Mississippi is most likely the poster child for our infrastructure challenges in this country. I said that it wasn't a matter of if certain systems would fail in Jackson, but a matter of when, and unfortunately those things have become a reality again. And part of our challenges in Jackson is not only many decades of disinvestment, decades of deferred maintenance and accumulated challenges, but also the real challenges of how innovation takes hold for a declining workforce. Needing to automate systems, understanding that much of that institutional knowledge has left the room. When you don't have the sufficient staffing needs the staffing that you need, then it makes the deficits all the more glaring. And so I am very invested in this conversation, invested in how we see a path forward, because the reality is that while I feel that it is my responsibility to lift this up for my city, Jackson is only the tip of the iceberg. If you believe that the communities you live in have the resilient infrastructure that you need, then I'm sad to say that I have to be the person to acknowledge that simply is not true. And so this is a timely discussion. This isn't one that we can wait for another 10, 20 years to have. This is a conversation that all of our communities will really see the implications of a lack of this infrastructure investment within the next couple of years. I would also add that the shifts in our climate are taking an increased toll on our infrastructure. Most recently, it was a flood that came through Jackson. We had a flood in 2020 that compromised our wastewater treatment facility. Here in 2022, it was the flood that challenged our drinking water systems. But 2 Februaries ago, it was freezing temperatures, sustaining snow and ice on the ground in Jackson, Mississippi for more than 2 weeks. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Jackson, but our experience historically with snow is, if snow falls on the ground, then we're rushing to make a snowman before, the end of the day, and it'll melt. So when we have prolonged Arctic temperature in Jackson, Mississippi for 2 weeks, our infrastructure wasn't weatherized to sustain that. We had raw water screens that froze. We had raw water pumps that became inoperable. We couldn't get untreated water in the facility. Therefore, we couldn't get treated water out of the facility. And so these are just, part and parcel of a myriad of challenges that we see in Jackson. but hopefully I can lift this up for every community that has seen or will see these challenges in the near future.
First, let's clap it up for the 4 panelists before we keep going right now. So let's memorialize a few different pieces. There's historic opportunities in terms of funding to address these challenges. There are many entities in the room that can help you address these challenges. And then you have mayors that are having you think differently about infrastructure and being more creative about this. I would love for our mayors to answer this first, and then I'm going to go to Roy and Mahesh on this point here. There is clearly a intersectionality that happens with infrastructure. So when there's a water crisis, there is a housing crisis. There's a air pollution, environmental crisis. There's a food crisis. They all happen simultaneously. If you can give a best practice, an observation of how entities came together well to address it in an intersectional manner. I know when we were at the White House, and I see Michelle DePass, who was in the administration with us, now CEO of Upside Tech Alliance, we had our sustainable communities. We had our Strong Communities Initiative, where it was, you can't have good transportation but then have a bad school, right? Like, there's gotta be intersection approach. So I love our mayors to talk that first and then talk through then how do we operationalize that.
So I might start with COVID-19, which was a public health pandemic, but also one where water was at the forefront early on in our response. We didn't know what the tools were available, but we were telling everybody to wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. It was also a time when a lot of people were having job loss, reduced hours, and real financial crises. So we were trying to figure out, as an operator of a water utility, how do we make sure people have water service, but we have to meet our financial obligations, fiduciary to our bondholders and to our citizens. One program that worked well for us was we developed a reduced flow product for people who were no longer paying their bills, but to make sure they did have the water for essential cooking and hand washing. Overwhelmingly in Phoenix, our water use at residential level is outdoor, so people doing landscaping and others, and we thought it would not be financially responsible to say people are filling swimming pools, but we want you to be able to wash your hands and cook and basic services of life. So that was one way where we were trying to balance many competing needs and try to put public health at the front.
First and foremost, I want to further contextualize your question, right? When you see issues, whether it's a city like Jackson or Flint, Michigan, that has water insecurity, whether you see the effects of heat island effect on communities, if you overlay that map, you see the same communities that are placed in that trauma time and time again. And I think that is part and parcel of what I call cycles of humiliation. And to take our communities out of those cycles of humiliation, I think our focus has to be trained to sustainable development goals. You know, as a nation, we're taught that GDP or the stock market are indicators of the success and failure of our nation. And I think we have to turn away from that and look at sustainable development goals as a true metric of success. Do people have reliable infrastructure? What is the quality of our schools? Are people having access to fresh fruits and vegetables? Those are the simple metrics that really indicate where our country is going and whether we're on the right track. And I think that we have to be introspective enough to challenge ourselves in that way. So, you know, I would say that in the midst of crisis, you often see the best of humanity. And so I would like to point out the nonprofit organizations that have come together, forming what they call the Mississippi Rapid Response Coalition, that have formed and placed their arms around Jackson so that organizations not only like the People's Advocacy Institute in Jackson, but whether it's Strong Arms of Jackson, Poor People's Campaign, the Kellogg Foundation, Bloomberg, these entities have come in and filled in the gaps for technical expertise that we need. You know, I think at some point in this conversation, we are not only going to have to talk about the intent of federal legislation to get money into communities that are in desperate need of it, but the politics of it going from their intent to our hands, right? There's a real serious gap there. What we have experienced in Jackson is when we're talking about these challenges about our infrastructure, what we are met with is state leadership that says, listen, if you give up your airport, right, then maybe we can give you the money that you need for this infrastructure. And so it's a real battle, right? And I'm not here to to sugarcoat that. I think we have to lift that up because these aren't Democratic or Republican challenges. These are human challenges that we're facing, and we need human rights for human beings.
As a water treatment operator, we don't really see ourselves as a treatment operator. We see ourselves in the public health business. We know that if we don't get it right, there's not enough doctors to fix it. And as the mayor mentioned about during COVID, pre-COVID, we always considered ourselves in the business of preventing disease, preventing waterborne disease. Then when COVID come along, we had a very unique opportunity to be a different resource for this community. And we partnered with an organization out of Boston called BioBot, and we started testing for COVID in our wastewater. And we were able to track trends of bacteria in wastewater, and that allowed our mayor, who was having to make the decision for millions of people in South Florida on what rules would be to manage COVID, and that gave her another data point for her medical team, and it turned out to be quite a beneficial one. And so now then we want to continue to expand that for many other diseases that we monitor in our wastewater to be a better partner and more synergies between our utilities and the overall public health. And we're very proud that our administration and our mayor allows us the resources to do that.
Well, so
You can clap it, I mean.
yeah. I want to give you two examples. We pride on seeing that the city workforce is augmented with the right tool sets so they can be more efficient. We had a case where a town used to spend 3 people doing water audits every 6 weeks. And through algorithms, we were able to cut that down to 0.2 people doing the same water audit and can be done every second day. And it is saving not only efficiency for the city, but $1,500 on an average for a resident that has leaks in their house. There are letters being sent thanking the mayor in helping identifying these leaks. That is, I think, a real opportunity here for efficiency for each of the cities. The second example, this is in Massachusetts. A new law requires that every time there is an overflow, sewer overflow, that within 2 hours, email need to be sent to all the stakeholders. So if there is a sewer overflow at midnight, the utility individual need to wake up by 2 a.m. to be able to send these emails. So he's asked us, can you automate this so I can retire, right? So this is the power, and I believe 20-30% of efficiencies can be achieved in the cities through technology and digitization, and that's really what charges me up.
So something that is clearly also consistent here is workforce and the skills and training of the next wave of the workforce for all that is happening here. We have 6.5 minutes. I'm going to do one quick rapid fire, a real serious question right now. What is the last song you listened to walking up before you came up on stage? Real quick.
I'm going to let you go.
Well, I'm a country boy. You know, I was listening to Morgan Wallen. What can I say?
Okay. You got some applause in the second row. That's good. Okay.
I was actually listening to Pandora and some gospel music this time. Now, usually it'd be some hip hop, but I needed to feel my spirit. All right, yeah. So,
Okay. Was it any song or just?
it was a litany of them, so I can't even remember.
Okay. That was a good praise answer right there. That was good right there.
So we know Miami, one listens to Pitbull. So I think international love.
You wouldn't believe this. It showed up on my YouTube stream, Bonnie M.
Bonnie what?
Bonnie M.
Bonnie M.
Yeah.
Bonnie M.
You don't know them?
Reggae out here. What you doing?
Yes, right. It was when I was growing up. It was pretty fascinating.
As a Jamaican, we see it. All right, let me. That's for later tonight, right there. Okay, I want this to be your final call to action, and then we'll wrap this up together. Here. What is the 1, max 2 things that you need help with that this smart city network can support you on? So I'll start with Mahesh, then I'm gonna go to Roy, I'm gonna go to Mayor Gallego, Mayor Lumumba. Again, 1 to 2 things that this network that has been built by Artie Tandon can support you on making your community smarter. Mahesh.
Yeah. So when I started Aquasight. I came from a Fortune 500 advisory company. I was stunned by the practices of the cities to procure innovation. And in fact, I had one of the cities that say, it looks like you guys are 3 years ahead of everyone else. Why don't I wait for 3 years until competition builds up? That's not, for an entrepreneur, that doesn't sound right. So if cities find partners that they can trust, my advice is, let's find a way you can procure so that we can get inspired, because ultimately we have to pay for the great talent. We can't compete against big players like Apple and Facebook and so on. So that would be my advice for Smart City Forum.
I would ask that each of you consider finding a way to help fellow Americans understand the value of water. Quite simply, we take it for granted so much that we're not willing to reinvest in it, and then we find ourselves with a failed infrastructure, and that if people simply understood the value, they would be more than willing to invest the small percentage of money it would take to rebuild our system continuously and not let them run to failure.
This was an exciting week for people interested in climate change and water. We were next to each other at the White House when the president celebrated the Inflation Reduction Act. Among many of the important components of that is $4 billion for drought and Western water. So we are looking for innovative solutions in Phoenix. Particularly would be interested in companies who've worked with the Bureau of Reclamation. For those of you who are from the East Coast, the Bureau of Reclamation does a lot of very important Western water management, including helping us with the Colorado River system. And I think they're very interested in innovation, including solutions that have not been tried before. And Phoenix is a city that has been willing to lead and try things. Right now we have, I think we're the first in the nation to have autonomous electric vehicles taking people to our airport, which is very high risk. We've done AI traffic signals with No Traffic, who was on the panel before us. We've done AI water system control. So we, for a big city, I think have a little bit of a tolerance for innovation and risk, and would love to hear what's out there.
Just quickly, taught a long time ago that necessity is the mother of inventions. And so right now, understanding just how necessary it is to create sustainable, equitable, dependable infrastructure. Would just ask that all of the genius that is in this room, that you continue to be inspired to how we find real solutions, not only for the institutional knowledge that has left the door, but looking ahead, with the crystal ball of what we're sure to contend with in the future, and addressing what those solutions are, those modern solutions are for those challenges.
Lauren Isley said, if there is magic on this planet, it is contained in water. I just want to make sure that we internalize and crystallize that we are in the midst of a human rights crisis right now in this country, in this world, that we do not have years to fix. We're talking about days. And for anyone that knows me in the Bronx, New York, we have been suffering for a long time, and I appreciate the point that was mentioned. Too often it's black and brown folk that are suffering over and over again. This is a institutionalized racism issue. This is an equity issue. This is a justice issue, and we have to be honest about that there. One, I want for the panelists to be able to see, this is a beautiful thing. When you have people literally standing outside the room wanting to talk about infrastructure and engage in infrastructure, it demonstrates the energy that is happening and we want to be attentive of. For everyone that's here, as an advisor of Smart City, I will say this. Make it a point to go speak to the elected officials and their respective teams. There's no reason to come to conferences like this and then go home and not have better relationships. Because we are all trying to save our communities in these respective ways accordingly, number one. Number two, as a call to action, make sure you spend time at these respective booths, please, to actually talk to the different team members. I know Upside Tech Alliance is right here up front. They're hosting the closing event tonight at 9:30 with U.S. Conference of Mayors at Good Time Hotel. I know FinTech Future has the 5 o'clock event as well. Spend time with each other on that front. But lastly, we will say this. At the end of the day, we have to recognize that this is a greater moment than we have internalized recently. I've said to people a lot, this is truly a reparations moment. The amount of money that is moving from the federal government on down, but it has to be actually spent out. And we have to make it easier for people to actually help our people. And so that's the reason why we have conferences such as this. Hopefully this panel was useful and helpful to you. If you can, one more time, give our panel a round of applause.